In this video, I'm going to cover how to get started flipping houses. And I'm going to do that by walking you through how I flipped my first house. I actually flipped my first house with a partner, so I'm going to walk through our process that we went through, some of the lessons that we learned, and if I would do it again. Let's start with where I flipped my first home. It was in Barstow, California. So I live in Orange County, California. Barstow is about 2.5 hours away. For those of you who don't know where Barstow is, it's about halfway from LA to Vegas. It's also known as the Crossroads of Opportunity, and it is home to the original Del Taco. My favorite Del Taco, excellent place to eat. We'd always go there. That's besides the point. But let's dive into the actual flip itself. All right, here's what I'm going to cover regarding the flip: how we found the deal, how we found our contractor, how we financed it, the overall experience, and major lessons that we learned. Okay, so how did we find the deal? This property was listed on the MLS. It was on the market for over 300 days. And we just called every agent in Barstow that had a recent listing, and we just talked to them. And so the calls would typically go like this: Hi, my name's Darren. I'm a cash buyer. I flip homes. Would your seller consider this property at X amount? So we'd always go in the call knowing how much we would want to offer. We never felt bad about offering so low. So this property was actually listed for $175,000. We knew it would never sell for that much because it's been on the market for over 300 days. We thought it would sell for about 230 to 245, on the low end 220, and we estimated 30 to 45,000 in construction costs. Those were just like our ballpark numbers, and we ended up talking to this agent, and this is actually what got us the deal. I asked her, do you have any other properties that we could flip? Do you have anything else coming to the market soon? And she said the owner of this property was trying to unload her portfolio. There was another property that she was going to list. The owner, I guess her husband had recently passed away, and he was the one that kind of managed the portfolio. So she was actually very happy to sell us both properties. And we kind of used that to our advantage, but we also wanted to help her by guaranteeing a smooth close. What I mean by a smooth close was that we weren't going to play any games. We were just, hey, we're going to buy the property as is, no questions asked. That's pretty much it. And that's pretty much how it went. We stayed true to our word. And so because we were buying both properties, we got them both at a large discount. So I think both of them were listed for $175. We ended up paying $120 for each of them. So for a total of $240. Okay, so basically how we found the deals was we just called agents in the area. We called all of them. I think we spent about 3 weeks, and we'd spend 3 to 4 hours calling every agent with a listing, basically going through the same conversation of, hey, do you have any properties that would need a cash buyer? Have you had any properties that you couldn't sell? Once we found ones that were really sitting for a long time, we would actually submit the actual offer, right? So a lot of agents will get verbal offers, but we just went ahead and submitted actual offers for the price that worked for us. Luckily for us, this lady wanted to get rid of 2 properties, so we bought them both, which leads to the next step of how did we finance the acquisition? Did we pay $120,000 of our own cash? No, we did a hard money loan. So we put 10% down plus closing costs. So with the hard money loan, the purchase price was $120, and the rehab that we asked for was $30,000. So a total loan of $150K. We had to come in out of pocket 10%. So $15,000 of our own money to get that loan. And how a hard money loan works is there's 2 parts. The first part is to purchase the property. So they fund that directly to escrow. The sale of the home, those funds go to the seller. The additional $30,000 that we requested for construction and rehab was a draw. So what that means is we would do the work on the house, and they would have an inspector come out and basically give us the money after they saw what was completed. And it would be in different phases. So they wouldn't give us $30,000 up front. We actually had to front that money to do the work, buy the materials, pay our contractor, and then they would reimburse us basically. So that's how we financed the property. And Yeah, we could have probably looked at homes, closer to Orange County. Barstow's about a 2.5 hour drive, 2 hours with no traffic. But we thought this would be a super low risk opportunity for us with a pretty high return. So we opted for the much lower price point. And yeah, basically to purchase the property, it was I think 20,000 out of pocket, not including the renovation and stuff. And you might be wondering why 20,000, because of closing costs on top of that 10% down. So now that we've gone over how we found the deal, how we financed the deal, I'm going to go over how we found our contractor. Funny enough, when we were touring the property, we just went and talked to the neighbors. We knocked on the neighbors' doors and asked them, "Hey, what do you think of this house? What do you think of the neighborhood?" And one of the neighbors, she was like, "Oh, my husband is a contractor." And so we figured, why not give this guy a shot? It would keep the property safe. It would keep the property secure. When we had talked to him, he actually had mentioned he thought a family was living there, and that gave us some concerns because a family was squatting there for quite some time. When we had toured the property, it was boarded up. When we went back to do some inspections on it, the boards were gone, the glass was broken. It definitely had signs of people being in the home. And so we figured the easiest, best way to keep the property secure was, besides installing cameras, was hire the neighbor. In hindsight, I don't know if that was the best decision, but you live and you learn. We actually ended up having a lot of issues with our contractor, and a part of it was he didn't really necessarily have the crew to help him do some of the work. Originally, we had a client buy a house in Barstow as well, and that's why we knew the area, and that client was actually an electrician. So he came and did some electrician work on the home, and we had the neighbor do a bulk of the other stuff, plumbing, drywall, paint, some landscaping, installing some of the cabinets, fixtures, all that good stuff. But we also took on some of the work ourselves, which I would not recommend if you want to scale. So in summary, from a high level on, learning how to flip, some major components here, right? Finding the deal, finding the money for the deal, finding the contractor, and then actually getting the property sold. For us, we kind of had bad timing with the market. We finished the project. It took longer than we expected. It didn't look as good as we thought. So that took us some time to get it to the level that we wanted it to be. And then eventually we got it sold. I think we just didn't lose money on this first house. And we kind of knew that going in. We wanted both those houses because we thought most of our profit, or a lot of the profit, would be on the other house with the tenant in it. That house was smaller, needed less work. It was in a better neighborhood. But to get them both, we had to buy this first one. And so my overall experience with this first one, my three major takeaways from this first flip: number one, make sure that the renovation isn't extensive. And if it is, budget for that. Make sure you buy it low enough where you can have a much larger renovation budget. We under budgeted on the renovation, and that ended up causing delays and costing us more money. Number two, make sure you find the right contractor. We had only basically interviewed 2 people, and we took the one that was most convenient. That ended up costing us time and money. And some headaches, because we had to go in and do some of the work ourselves. And we actually learned from this, because on the first one, we did not have a clear scope of work for our contractor. We had like an outline, but it was not super clearly defined on what things were required and expected of our contractor versus what we would be willing to do. And I think because this contractor saw and knew that we were out of town, kind of took advantage of that. And then he saw that when we were there, we would do some of the work ourselves. Just make sure you have a clear expectation and understanding with your contractor, and make sure you pick the right contractor. And then number 3, be conservative with your expected sales price. So my partner thought we were going to sell for much more. I thought we were going to sell for much less. He wanted $245 for it. I thought $225 would have been fine. I think we ended up selling for $230 or $235. So we were right in the middle. But that's the other thing about, having a partner, is you don't get to make all the decisions yourself. So those were my 3 biggest takeaways from flipping my first property. Overall experience, I probably would not flip in that area again, because of how difficult it is to find a good contractor out there. In terms of the price points, it makes a lot of sense because it's low risk, but it is a far drive for me too. So overall, I would not flip there. I would definitely flip closer to where I'm at, but the price points and the risk are significantly higher. If you thought this video was helpful, please subscribe. If you want to actually get into the details of the transactions and go over like the numbers, the hard money rates, any specifics about the actual flip, email me. I'm happy to share.